Jessie Lombardo Stack is the Director of Career Design at the State University of New York at Geneseo. Jessie is deeply committed to transforming the role of career services in higher education to create equitable and sustainable structure for all students, regardless of social capital. Using the principles of life design, she meets students where they are to engage their curiosities and reflect on their experiences inside and outside of the classroom as a way to design a path forward. Jessie enjoys opportunities to work on challenges that require collaboration, innovation, and a visionary approach. She believes that in the spaces where there is struggle to find a solution, there is an opportunity for growth and change. Jessie has been working in career services for over 20 years, but continues to be challenged to adapt in this role because the world of work is constantly evolving, and so are the needs and expectations of students and employers. Jessie has completed her master's in higher education and student affairs administration from Buffalo State College, and has a bachelor's in psychology from the University of Buffalo. So welcome, Jessie.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's wonderful to be here, everyone. Well, I am so glad to be here. I will tell you all a funny story to get started. So obviously you can see from my background, I'm working from home because it's Saturday, but I will forewarn you that I have a rooster who is outside my house, and he likes to make appearances and seems to somehow wait till I always give a presentation to. So if you do hear a barnyard animal sound, you're not hallucinating. It is a real rooster, and he probably will wait for the opportunity to say hello to everyone virtually. It's really about making your experience work for you. And I like the title because I think, as my introduction said, I've been doing this work for quite a while. And I think sometimes so my first question, what is experience? When you think about that question, what is experience? And can you give me some examples of your own experiences? So I'm gonna just take a minute to pause and let everyone kind of put their thoughts in here. I love these responses so far. Keep them coming. That's great. I love the last one, how you got really specific about what that experience is. And I think that's really important to think about too. Great. And feel free to keep those ideas coming through. You know, if you think of something new, you can pop it in the chat and I'll keep checking it. But what I really like about what a lot of you wrote in there is you didn't limit experiences to something that you were paid to do. A lot of times I think people think about experience from the lens of something that was a professional experience, something that was maybe paid, something very formal. But actually, on the contrary, a lot of times experiences, any type of life application. I love somebody put in their experiences, my family, my friends, my life. And what I like about looking at experience through this lens is it really provides an opportunity for everyone to have experience. So sometimes, when I'm critiquing a resume or talking to students about experience, they'll say, well, I don't have any experience. Maybe I'm a first generation college student. I've never had the opportunity to do a formal internship, or maybe I haven't even worked a part-time job. So I have no experience. And really, I think that that's not the case for anyone. Your life is your experience. And I think taking some time to reflect on that is really, really important. So I think a lot of you had some really great ideas in the chat. And so that makes me hopeful that you're really going to understand some of these concepts. Okay. All right. The other piece of experience, and what I like about this quote to get us started and get us thinking, when you're thinking about your future, it's about understanding how your experience translates into key skills that are going to be helpful in some capacity. So whether that's with an employer, maybe you start your own business, maybe you have a few business ventures you're thinking about in the future. It's thinking about all the skills you have and then thinking about them from an innovative lens. So not just saying, I'm a good communicator and putting a period at the end of that sentence and that's it, but it's thinking about how you have used your communication skills and how might you combine those skills in a meaningful way with other skills you have that make you really unique. So I like this quote in that it talks about skills and combining them in very creative, meaningful ways to think about how that relates to your future goals, whether you have goals identified or whether those are maybe unclear right now, and that's okay too. So why this is a hard concept sometimes. This is not easy. I think a lot of people have the perception that, making your experience work for you or the concept of articulating your skills is an easy concept, and it's really not. So I've identified some ways, and these are mostly from my life experience in doing this work with students in a lot of different aspects of college experience and in the community, is a lot of times people don't have experience overall or think about it from the context of their life. They limit it to one or two tiny experiences and focus on their skills from that capacity. And they have a hard time articulating the value of that experience. So if you had an internship or you're a leadership position in ALD, for example, and you're not thinking about how to translate that experience to a meaningfully to an employer, a big one is lack of reflection on experiences. So a lot of times we're so busy and we go from one thing to the next, we don't stop to think about what did we actually learn? What skills have I developed from that experience? What results did I achieve as a result of me being part of that experience? What did I contribute in a meaningful way? How does my experience make me unique? And then lastly, can you tell a captivating story with your experiences? Does that depict a little bit about who you are? In some cases, like writing a resume, it's a little bit more tangible. You're writing the experience down, you're kind of outlining the things, your tangible results that you achieved as a result of that experience. But sometimes it's harder to do in just conversations with people and networking. So there's all different ways you can demonstrate your experience. But I think lack of reflection overall, we're so busy to get to the next thing sometimes that we don't stop to think about what did we just learn and how does that fit into our total experiences that we've had. So my biggest suggestion is to take that moment to pause every once in a while and think about what just occurred. What did I just learn? And sometimes we learn from certain experiences. Sometimes we learn, gosh, I didn't like that at all. In my opinion, that's a great learning. It doesn't always have to be necessarily that was the most amazing experience and I learned all these things. Sometimes we learn what we don't like, and I find that to be equally important. The third one is not understanding the skills employers are seeking. And hopefully we're going to look at that today, and I'm going to help you a little bit more understand through a framework of career readiness competencies. And the last one, employers will not make the connection for you. They won't look at your resume. They won't look at your LinkedIn profile. They won't talk to you and sit there and say, based on what you just told me, based on what you just showed me, this is how you'd be useful in my organization. They will not do that. Maybe some of the nice ones will, or if you have a mentor, they might do that. But generally speaking, employers will not make those connections on your behalf. You have to make those connections. You have to advocate for yourself. So you have to say, these are the skills I have, and this is how I think that I will be useful in your organization. The hard part is the last sentence I put on the slide. This changes every single time you apply for a new opportunity. So not only do you need to know your own skills, you need to know what employers are looking for, but also understand that that changes based on the different industries that you're looking to find an opportunity in. So when you did your intro slide, and a lot of you said where you're from and what you're studying, that might look, those skills might look a little different based on what your major is, what types of career opportunities you're targeting. So there's general skills that employers are looking for, and then there's those industry specific skills that you have to take the time to find out more about. So how do we do that? These are some things, in my opinion, that you can do to make that easier. Talk to people. This is the most underrated thing now, especially that everything, a lot of things are virtual now. People are very comfortable chatting online or sending a quick email or sending a text message, and that's good. But if you get the chance to physically talk to someone, whether face-to-face or even on a Zoom call, it's so incredibly meaningful. Ask them about their story. Everyone you meet, ask them, how did you get to where you are? What sort of things did you do? How did you make the decisions? And you could start with today, if you have, the opportunity to do this in a networking capacity, the different students you're talking to, you have your board advisors here from ALD, you have a variety of professionals you're going to connect with today. Take the time to ask them about their story. How did you get to where you are? Because even if they're in a different industry, I find that a lot of times there's some really interesting insights you can take away that can be really meaningful that you can apply in your own career. Seek out experiences that are out of your comfort zone. So a lot of times we hear advice from people say, do the internship related to your career field. And while I fully agree with that, I 100% think that doing an internship related to your career field is one of the most high impact practices for career mobility. However, sometimes, based on yourself, maybe there's something you've always wanted to do and you've just never quite gotten, whether it's courage, the opportunity. And I recognize that there's privilege associated with that. I want to make sure that I do put that out there, that not everybody can just drop what they're doing and do whatever they want. But there's ways to look at your experiences and say, how could I grow just a little bit more outside of that comfort zone? So I'm not saying you have to travel, all over the world, but maybe there's an opportunity to do something a little bit different that has seemed like a little scary or intimidating to you, and finding ways to sort of take some steps toward that. Seek out some new experiences. If you don't like to speak publicly, seek out an opportunity to find room to do that. If you've never learned another language, maybe there's a way to take a LinkedIn learning course or a course on Coursera. Find little ways to kind of grow your experiences in ways that make you sometimes feel like you're stretching that comfort zone. I think that part is important because that's where you will see the growth. Assessing your skills and following your curiosities, really important. I'm a big fan of life design. If you've never heard of it, there's a book, it's called Designing Your Life, and it is written by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. They were two faculty members from Stanford. And honestly, it is the best career advice I've ever received, and I have now implemented it across my campus, but it's really about career design, and it's designing your way forward. There's no correct path that one person should take, but it's really about it's not thinking about what I want to do for the rest of my life. It's thinking about what do I want to do right now? What gives me energy right now? It takes a little bit of that pressure off thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm going to make this decision. And it's going to lock me into this thing for the rest of my life. That's not really what you want to do. You want to think about, what am I curious about right now? What gives me energy? And how can I follow that and take advantage of opportunities that are sort of connected to that idea? So think about the skills you have right now, which we're going to do in a minute, and then follow your curiosities as you move forward, because the skills will come. What makes it more engaging is when you're doing things that you really, truly, intrinsically are motivated to do, not because you think that those are the things you're supposed to do. So really use college as a time to take advantage of some of those opportunities to follow your curiosities and try new things. I have to, of course, give the plug to my career services colleagues, but also faculty and staff at your college and university. Learning more about the services and resources available. I will tell you, only a very small percentage of college students take advantage of their career services. And just, watching real quickly the list of institutions that you all listed in your intro, many of you have phenomenal career services at your college and university. A lot of times they have systems like Handshake where they post jobs and opportunities, different connections, alumni connections, networking events, job fairs, boutique industry fairs. Take advantage of those things. In talking to your faculty, ask your faculty, could you connect me with an alum who's has career experience in this area I'm interested in? That is a great way to begin some of those conversations and start to network. And then lastly, reaching out to employers. Sometimes I recognize this can be kind of scary, or not knowing who to contact. And that's when, again, faculty, staff, career services folks at your institution can be really helpful to move that forward. I'm just going to check the chat really quick. Oh, thank you, Trish, for including that in there. Yes, and that's the giveaway for the is the book. So it's super exciting. And also, if you prefer to watch something, there is a TED Talk that you can Google. It's about 25 minutes, and then there's shorter versions on there as well. But I highly recommend it. It's really fascinating. All right, so let's move it along here. Okay, so I want to switch gears for a second, and I want to ask you the question of, what does career ready mean to you? So when you think about being career ready, what does that mean? And you can use the chat, or if anyone is so inclined and you want to raise your hand and unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that. But you can use the chat to take a look at that.
The question was also just posted on Instagram.
Great. Thank you, Trish. So yeah, feel free to comment on Instagram. You can comment on the chat. I'm just gonna. Are we hoping to drive traffic towards Instagram? Say that again. I think someone asked a question.
Are we hoping to drive the traffic towards Instagram, Trish?
Yeah, either place would be great.
Okay.
Good. I see the word prepared a lot. I see the word growth a lot. Professionalism, connected to your career goals. Confidence. Thriving, that's another good one. Knowing you have the skills and mindset. That's so important. I love that comment, Lindsay. Yeah, because you can have the skills, but if you don't have the mindset or confidence, sometimes those skills remain hidden. It's a really good point. Yes, Anam, go ahead.
Hi, I'd like to point out that I agree with all of these intrinsically, but maybe extrinsically, knowing that what the specific career itself requires, what their requirements are for you, and if your resume matches what they want as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because you can have skills, you can have confidence, but if those skills, again, kind of going back to the point we talked about earlier, having to know what industry you're going into and what they're seeking, because sometimes the best advice I give to people as it relates to that is reading job openings and reading job postings, because you might think that you know what an employer is seeking, but until you actually start reading, you start to realize where some of those gaps are. And I do think that external piece is also really important. So that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other thoughts? The Instagram post, I would love to kind of go back through that afterwards. I'll take a look at it, but it's a really important question to consider. I'm going to kind of go back into the presentation mode. 1 second. So the formal definition, so I really like what you all had to say, but I want to point out that there's an organization called NACE. It's the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And a few years ago, they started a conversation about what does career ready mean? And they really strove to define it in a way that was meaningful to a lot of different employers across many different industries, which I really liked, because it wasn't geared toward one particular industry or one particular career path. It was really a kind of a culmination of more broadly considering this in areas of competency. So career readiness is a foundation from which to demonstrate requisite core competencies that broadly prepare the college educated for success in the workplace and lifelong career management. So what you're looking at, the image on the slide that is white, that identifies 8 career readiness competencies: career and self-development, communication, critical thinking, equity and inclusion, leadership, professionalism, teamwork, and technology. So these are the broad areas. At the bottom of this slide, I've included the link that you can click on to see all 8. And what I like about the particular PDF handout is it takes you through all 8 and gives you a definition and also gives you sample behaviors. So we're going to do a practice one in a minute for the equity and inclusion one, just to kind of get you thinking about it. And then, hopefully when you have time as you finish this conference and you think about what's coming next for you, taking some time to really think about how you're going to develop these in the future. So before we dive into an example, I wanted to point out there are a lot of ways that you can demonstrate your experience. I think naturally when I say to students or to anyone really, how do you demonstrate your experience? They think of the usual suspects like on my resume, in my cover letter, and in my interview. But really, anytime you're having a conversation with someone, anytime you're putting information out into the world in some way, is a chance for you to demonstrate your experience in some way. So, something like even networking events, social media, if you have references, whether they're people who are going to speak on your behalf that are a reference, or maybe they're writing letters of recommendation for you, depending on if you're going to grad school. References are also a great way to kind of emphasize your skills that you have. LinkedIn, Handshake, if your school uses Handshake or another platform where they post jobs and opportunities, that's another place, which I will say a sidebar. Even if your school doesn't use Handshake, any student can sign up for an account on Handshake because they believe strongly in democratizing access to opportunities. So every single student, even if your college does not use it, can sign up for Handshake Profile. And it's kind of like LinkedIn for a college student specifically. So I highly do recommend it. In your elevator pitch, in general conversations, personal statements. And then I thought, you know, are there other areas, other places you can use? Does anyone have any ideas that they want to share that I did not indicate down here? Other ways you can demonstrate your experiences, other places, other opportunities. I'm sure I've forgotten some, but these are what I think some of the big ones. But feel free to jump in and add some to the chat if you'd like. All right, so let's try this, okay? So here's an example. So if you were to click on that link and go to the PDF, you're gonna see 8 sort of boxes that highlight the core competency areas. So one that I pulled out is equity and inclusion. So first it defines what this broad skill competency area is, and then it gives some sample behaviors. So I'd like everybody to reflect on this competency for a minute and list examples of how you would demonstrate you have this competency to a potential employer or graduate school. You can highlight this in the chat. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand and share with the group. Just some examples. So maybe I'll get us started thinking about it. For me, if I were going to look back at my experience and say, how would I demonstrate this? I might say that for the Center Career Design Center, we wrote a statement to the college campus about our commitment to being an anti-racist campus. And a lot of the software programs that we purchase are based in equity and access opportunities to social capital for all of our students. So I want everybody to think about ways that they might demonstrate that they have the equity and inclusion competency to a potential employer. And if you want to talk, raise your hand. I'm curious what you all have done, whether in your college experience, in your community, maybe personally. What have you done that you could demonstrate this competency to someone else, like an employer or graduate school? And if it's easier to just unmute. Okay, great. Thank you, Ashley. Good. Expanding your knowledge on other cultures. Great. Yes, Nicholas.
Like if I were to show to a employer how I would show the equity and inclusion.
Yes.
For example, let's say I'm in an interview. This could be easily shown through if they ask for a personal case of personal growth, showing how you brought someone in that really no one else would, and you didn't discriminate against anyone for any sort of flaws, maybe their sexuality, their gender, their romanticality, stuff like that.
That's great. That's wonderful. And, you know, sometimes finding the best space to do that in, figuring out, you know, is it something I put on my resume? Is it something I talk about in a conversation? Is this something that because when I'm on social media, maybe you're on Twitter and you post a lot of very thought-provoking articles on this. So that's great. Brianna.
I've actually kind of worked on this like all semester, like talking about this. But I think a really important thing is just having conversations, really. It's just like people being more informed about certain things. So like, you know, they can have open mind. And if something happens, you know, we can like help other people act on it and then not just be bystanders when like certain stuff go on just because we're not informed about it.
That's great. And I love how you said you've worked on it all semester. So that kind of tells me that you've been doing a lot of different things around this, and it probably is entrenched in many different things that you're doing, whether on campus or off campus. And my guess is if I were to look at your resume or some other things you've done, it would be maybe thematic thing that I would pull out as an employer if I were looking at, you know, you for an application, that I would see that if it was something that was a deep commitment to the work that you've done. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, that's great. So I'm just grabbing this last one here with Macy. I really like that one because, you know, a lot of times people think that these competencies really have to be directly correlated to the area. So for example, if I say equity and inclusion, maybe there's a ways that I'm demonstrating this that are more tied to, you know, someone might say your work in a multicultural organization or your work in diversity programming, you know, so it's very direct work. But what Macy, what you highlighted, what I like this is you said, I'm employed as a photographer and work with a marketing team and make sure to highlight diversity through the images we post. So I think that's a really great example of how you can take almost any experience and figure out a way to infuse equity and inclusion into that work. So I thank you for that example because I think it's really, it really demonstrates the idea that really anything you do can have this element added to it, infused as a part of you know, the work that you're doing. So I really like that. And I appreciate everyone's comments around this. So as you're going through these different competency areas, I think it's important to think about, you know, where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? And not really weakness, but where do you have to develop some things? So the worksheet reflection, this is something that you can do on your own, but I think it's something to take some time to process. Aligning your experiences with your core competency areas, really taking the time to say, based on all those experiences we talked early on, how do they align with some of these core competencies? And then assessing, you know, where do I have a lot of experience? So if I were to look at my own, I might say, well, I have a lot in the leadership area. I have a lot in, you know, maybe equity and inclusion. And maybe I need to do more work on the technology piece. And so how am I going to get those experiences? And I think bringing it back to ALD and your role here, especially for students that are just getting involved in this organization, thinking about the future, how will this organization help you develop your career readiness competencies? And leaning into some of the leaders that are here today to say, you know, what competencies did this really help you to develop and what suggestions you have for me? So using your peers to help guide you to think about what other options are available. So really taking some time to think about where have you done really well and where can you align future experiences to help you further develop these other competencies specifically. Okay. And the last point I'll make is kind of bringing it back to this idea of career and life design in this reflective piece on reflecting on your skills, letting your curiosities guide you. So don't pick experiences based on just the skills you'd hope to gain, but try to align them with things that are meaningful, things that you're curious about, because you're going to have a better experience. Keep reflecting on your experiences. And I just want to add that it is okay to change your direction. It is okay to not know where you're heading and getting comfortable with that ambiguity because the world of work changes so quickly. And we ourselves change. You know, I'm not the same person I was when I graduated from college, and you're not going to be either. So you have to be okay with the unknown and sort of being able to shift gears or pivot as you have more experiences in your life and as you move forward in your career plan. But building your way forward, start connecting those dots. You know, what did I learn from this experience and how will I plan differently for the next one? Trying new things. And then most importantly, I think talking to people. Exposure and exploration are so important, especially if you feel like you have not had a lot of exposure to different careers. Make it a point to have that exposure right now while you're in college, because sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. There could be an amazing opportunity out there, but you're not exploring it because you don't even know it exists. And so I think that's the important piece about talking to people and really taking the time to do that, to design that meaningful career, because the skills will come if you follow your curiosities and you follow the things that are meaningful to you specifically. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me and taking the time to chat with me today. And I look forward to keep reading your post on Instagram about what it means to be career ready. And feel free to connect with me if you're on LinkedIn and you want to connect moving forward. I'm happy to do that. But thank you.